As Frances has said in her introduction, most of you will have seen these slides. So it's just a quick recap, probably take about 2-3 minutes, very, very quickly, and then we'll pass you over to Julie, who will obviously look at the response journey and to ensure that we get compliant bids from potential suppliers. Frances, could you move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so my name is David Anderson. I'm one of the procurement advisors within South Lanarkshire Council, and part of the remit that we have is to look at obviously the roads and the infrastructure framework. So the framework details, the council requires to appoint suitable contractors to a multi-lot framework. We'll talk about the lots just in the slides as we go forward. Contractors will be ranked per lot based on their combined price quality score achieved at a framework appointment. Again, I'm sure Julie will touch on the kind of price quality elements of a tender bid. The anticipated start date of the framework is June 2023 for a 4-year term, which is the normal term for a framework. There is no guarantee given or implied of any value or volume of call-off contract which may be made by the council on the framework. So again, getting on the framework is no guarantee of work. Again, it just depends on the capital programme and the work that we need to obviously go through with the council. The framework will be accessible through the council, focusing on delivering highways and infrastructure projects. And the estimated value is approximately £23.5 million over a 4-year period. Now that's an estimated value. I would imagine it'll be very, very close to that, to be fair. Okay, so next slide, please. So as I mentioned just in the slide there, the framework will be governed under NEC Framework Contract April 2013 contract conditions, and will cover a range of work services lots as follows. Again, we spoke at our previous event about the roads network improvements, roads routine maintenance, labour and plant only, temporary traffic management services, maintenance of council bridges and structures, water infrastructure, outdoor infrastructure and groundworks. Now, at the presentation, and again, these slides are available, there is a further breakdown of the different elements within the lots as well. So that's available for you after the event. Okay, next slide, please. So the operation of the framework, the council may appoint a contractor to carry out work services either by direct award or mini competition. Contractors have no obligation to accept direct awards or mini competition offers. Reasons for declining, however, should be provided by them. The council will request that contractors commit to delivery of the community benefits through the life of the framework as well. Community benefits, community wish list is quite high on the council agenda just now, so it's something that we aim to include within the body of the framework as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so our tender closing date for the tender timeline is tender closing date is the 10th of March 2023. Tender evaluation and verification is from March until May 2023. A proposed contract award is June 23. So you can see it's got quite a tight timeline as well. So again, we need to make sure we get the bids in. It's very unlikely that tender date will be extended, so we'd be looking for all bids to be in for it's definitely the 10th of March without any extensions being granted. Okay, next slide, please. So really, this was a very, very quick intro based on the previous presentation that my colleague Peter Cameron had provided previously, and now we're really going to hand over to Julie to look at PCS, tender completion and bid submission. So again, thank you for your time. As Frances said, any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them through PCST. Okay, thank you for your time.
Oh,
Over to you, Julie.
Fran. Yeah.
Oh, apologies. Apologies. Yes, that says we're now switching over to Julie. So Julie will share her screen with us.
Right, okay. So first of all, I'm actually going to just quickly jump into a PowerPoint that you will get after the event. So if I just do a slideshow from the beginning, and then we'll go live into PCS and PCST.
Perfect. That works. Thank you so much.
So it's just some people quite like to have, you know, something to refer back to, as well as you will get a recording, but you'll have this as well. So just what we're going to cover is finding the contract notice on PCS itself, and then showing you what you need to take a wee note of, etc., to be able to get into PCS tender, which is where South Lanarkshire Council are actually running the tender itself, is on the tendering platform PCST. I'll give you a little tour of PCST, taking into account the framework that you're interested in. And then lastly, just give you a few hints and tips at the end for actually completing this tender for the framework. So hope that's okay. So let's just go in. That's the website there, which I'm sure you will know by now, publiccontractscotland.gov.uk. This is the screen where I searched for the contract notice itself. So I just put in South Lanarkshire as the buyer name. It's a really good search function that PCS has got. And first one that came up was the Roads and Infrastructure Framework. So what you do is you see that one's blue rather than black for the rest. The blue means it's something you can click on and it takes you to to something else. So you would click on that one. And then that takes you to the notice itself. And you can see here there's different tabs in the notice. So you've got the overview, the full text, further info, contact info. The two that you mostly look at are introduction, which is, you know, you're deciding, is this for you? And then have a look at the full text notice. South Lanarkshire Council have put a lot of information in there, so it's good. It means you don't have to go to PCST to get a lot of the information. You can get it straight from the advert itself. What you would note down here is the project code 23182. And also that it's in ITTs, and it'll become obvious why you need to note those two things down when we go into it. Okay, so things that I spotted when I was looking at the contract notice, as David said, it's a framework. It's going to last for 4 years. For those of you who don't know the difference between what a contract is and a framework, so a contract would be, you know, we are awarding you the contract to supply, say, I don't know, or to cut down trees, because I'm looking at trees here, to cut down these trees. It's you know, very well specified. You put a price in to do it, and you actually get that work. So you've got a definite contract to do it. You're just as committed as the buyer is. You've got an obligation then to cut down those trees, and they've got an obligation to give you that contract and to pay you for doing it. With a framework, I kind of always think of it like a bit of an umbrella type arrangement. And if any of you can remember things like preferred supplier lists, it's a bit like that, but there's a lot more rigour to it, and it means that the procurement regulations are met. But basically, if you're successful in getting on a framework, you will be one of a number of contractors on the framework, and South Lanarkshire will then call off from the framework, and you then may have to carry out mini competitions to win bits of work, or some of it may be directly awarded. But basically, it's like the first stage. So if you get on the framework, then you are in a good place to be able to win further work. But as David said, there is nothing guaranteed. There are 7 lots on the framework, and with the overall value over the 4 years for all the lots, 23.5 million. The split between quality and price is quality is 40% and price is 60%. So what that means is that all of the quality questions you get will be scored out of either usually 4, 5 or 10, and you will get a total score for your quality, which makes up 40% of your score. And then there'll be a pricing schedule there to complete. And I see there's been a couple of questions on that already in PCST. And that will then be prorated, and the lowest bidder in each lot will get the full 60%, then the rest is prorated against that. So that's how the quality price works. In section 3 of the contract notice, you'll see there are conditions for participation. I just wanted to pull a few of these out just to make you aware of them. So, for example, there are financial ratios which you have to meet, and if you don't meet them, there is a sort of alternative way of evidencing your financial health. And helpfully, South Lanarkshire Council have put in an attachment which helps you to be able to calculate those from your accounts. There are 2 requirements for insurance. One is employer's insurance of 10 and public of 5. If you don't have this level of insurance at the moment, don't worry. You can just tick a box to say that you don't have it just now, but you'll get it if successful. And then South Lanarkshire, if you are successful, will follow up and say, you've been successful, we now need you to put this level of insurance in place. Importantly, because all of these will be pass-fail, because it is a one-stage process, then you need to be able to evidence past experience, and I've got another slide on that in a minute. It's got to be relevant, i.e. it's got to be very similar to what South Lanarkshire are currently procuring, and it's got to be within the last 5 years, and there's a template for that, and talk about that in a minute. They have listed a number of licenses also that you need to have, and also they would prefer external accreditation such as ISO 9001 or ISO 14001, which is the quality and environment international standards. That if you don't have these, they have said or equivalent, and again, very helpfully, there is guidance there. So you're not left guessing what equivalent means. So you could go and read that guidance and see if you can say yes, confidently, yes, we do have that, and when requested, we can provide that. Also worth noting that South Lanarkshire has in place an information sharing protocol with Police Scotland, and this is for serious and organised crime. So what that means is they will provide sort of shortlisted stroke, almost awarded suppliers details to the police, and they will carry out checks just to make sure that there's nothing untoward with any of the people connected with the companies that have been applying. Okay, so we found the tender in PCS, and now we're going into PCST. Just to tell you that it is a tendering service. Again, it's free of charge at use for yourself, for contractors. It is a different site, and you do need to register separately if you haven't done that already. It's worth doing that after this webinar. It's an optional site for buyers to use. It's not made mandatory, and it's really up to the buying organisation whether they use it or not. The good thing is that once you've used PCST once, then the responses to the single procurement document, which is the sort of selection part, what was previously probably called the PQQ, then the good thing is that those answers are saved, which means you don't have to keep typing them in. So this is the home page for PCST. And as you can see here, where my cursor is here, register as a supplier. So if you aren't already registered, you would register down there. If you are already registered, then put your username and password in and sign in. Once you're in PCST, they just want to point out that there is a help desk, so you can either email them or phone them. They are very good. And yeah, I've found them very, very helpful when I've had the odd thing that I didn't know how to do. And then here you've got the projects is under that arrow, and the dashboard is an overview. If you're a type of organisation that's maybe got, you know, half a dozen tenders on the go, then in your dashboard you can see them all there at once. But failing that, I usually actually use the PQQ and the ITT sections. And as we noted from the contract notice, this one is an ITT. So what you would first of all do is click on ITTs. When you do that, you will get a big long list of tenders that are being conducted on PCST, and it's a bit of a nuisance, but it doesn't have a column for who the buying organisation is. Otherwise, what you could do is just scroll through and find the SLC ones, but you can't. So the best way to do it, I have found, is to use the search functionality up here. So what you do is this bit here, enter filter, you click on that down arrow and we'll choose project code because that's what is on the advert. And I just use contains. You could say equals, but I always think it's just a little bit safer to say contains in case it, for example, just has maybe, you know, an invisible space at the beginning or at the end, and it means that it doesn't find it. So then you put in the 23182, and then on the right here you'll see the search button. So you click on search, and as if by magic, it will appear. Once you click on that, you can see the different lots, and they're all under the same project code, but there's different lots. So again, you would have had to read in the contract notice the details for each of the lots to find out which one or ones you are actually going to apply for. When you do that, you click on the blue writing again. And when you do that, you will come to this page here. And this is where it's just an overview page. You have to decide whether you're going to express interest or not. And if you do, then you will click this button up here, the blue box, express interest up there. Don't worry about if you decide not to express interest, you can do it later. But not only that, if you do express interest and then as you're going through it think, no, this is not for us, then you can withdraw your interest as well, so that you don't keep getting all of the clarification emails that come through. Okay, so when you do click on one, what you'll find is there's actually two different things to do here. So you've got this one here, which is the qualification bit, which in our speak is the SPD, the single procurement document. That's being done in this sort of master schedule here, and you would click on that to complete that. So again, you'll see the light blue, these are all links to things, so you would click on that. And then down here you can see that I clicked on lot 1, and so I've now got a blue bit there that I can also click on for that. So no matter which lot you apply for, by clicking on it in the main screen, it'll take you through to this. Okay. Right, so again, I'll show you this in the system itself, but the colours are a wee bit wishy-washy in PCST, so sometimes it's hard to see, but I just wanted to point out that these are actually tabs. So for example, this one's showing ITT details, and if I do my cursor like that, you'll see that actually the ITT details has got 4 sort of subsections in it. The two that you'll mostly use is your buyer attachments and your my response. So one of the first things you'll do is go into buyer attachments and download those attachments and read the documents thoroughly before you start to respond. And also, usually there's just two. Usually there's just ITT details and messages, but in this case, there is a tab for multi-lot ITTs, and then you've got your messages tab as well there. Hopefully you can see that. So within the buyer attachments, here's your ITT details, settings, buyer attachments, my response. We're in buyer attachments. You can see all of the attachments here. The good news is it doesn't show on the screen, so you can click in each of these individually, but there's also a button that says mass download, and I suggest that's what you do because it means that you've not run the risk of missing any of the attachments itself. I said I would show you the template for the examples. It's really important that when you're completing this, that you make it as detailed as you possibly can. So when it says description of works carried out that demonstrate the relevant experience, don't just put, you know, filled in potholes on the A7. You know, you have to say how many, what were the resource you used, how long the project was for. You've got contract start and end dates. Give a little bit of a description of what the works were, any complexities in the work, what the contract terms and conditions were. And you know, it's got to be very comprehensive, detailed description of what you've done, not just a one-liner. I mean, they'd probably be looking for at least half a page, if not a page, of detail on the description of the previous work, and you've got to do 3 of these, and it's pass-fail. So just some hints and tips. You will see when we go into PCST that it's actually difficult to not answer questions because of the way that it's set out, but just make sure when you're finished, you think you've finished, scan down and check that you've answered everything. It's really important that everything is answered as fully and comprehensively as you can. It's a bit different from other types of writing. You're not trying to yes, you have to be concise and clear. It's got to be clear what you're writing, and it's got to be written in a way that an evaluator, when they pick it up, they understand what you're trying to say. But it's also got to be comprehensive. So the way to tease that out is when you've written something, ask, so what? You know, why am I writing that? You know, we've got we work in teams of 2. You know, and the point is, so you know, why is that important? So for health and safety reasons, nobody's working alone. It means that we've got built-in quality assurance because we can check each other's work. One of those people will have be fully qualified, the other one may be part qualified or an apprentice. So you can start to see how you flesh it out. And then you're talking about the whats. So again, when you're writing it, what is it you're saying? How do you do it? Where did you do it? When and why? If you start to ask these questions, what it does, it just elaborates on your response and starts to turn into a lot more of a comprehensive response. If there's anything in the tender at all that you don't understand, it's always better to ask. And we'll come on to that in a second. So it's the messages section in PCST that you look at. The deadline to note is the 24th of February at noon. So what I suggest is you don't leave it too long before you read through all those documents. Depends how you like to work. If you want to do them online, saves printing them off. Just highlight certain things, or what I sometimes do is I'll copy and paste certain things into like an overview document. Or you can print it off and highlight it with a highlighter pen, use sticky notes and all that kind of thing, however you prefer to work. Just to note that the question that you ask, all questions and the answers must be published by the buyer, so they will be visible to everybody in the exercise. But don't let that put you off. They won't know who asked the question. You know, the people, the other people applying for the bids won't know who asked. It's got to be anonymous. And I'm sure David would agree that it doesn't get seen negatively. In fact, it teases out anything that might be ambiguous and gets that cleared up before the bids actually come in. And lastly, because I won't be covering this too much in the actual demo itself, but if you do go this and you're starting to think that you don't meet the minimum selection criteria, then there are other options available to you. One of which is to put in a joint bid with another contractor who doesn't meet the minimum criteria. So and these are things that strategically you would need to start thinking about now to give yourself a fair chance to get this all organised and ready. And the other thing you might think is, I'm not quite there yet, I'm not quite ready, so but I'm really happy to be a subcontractor to a main contractor, in which case you may well be able to find, once this contract's awarded, it will be award notice, and you could approach the main contractors to be a subcontractor for them. On the other hand, if you do decide to go yourself, but you will be subcontracting some of the work, then it's just worth noting that you have to put the details in the supplier single procurement document, the SPD, and there's a place for you to do that. And also, if you are relying on that subcontractor to meet any of the selection criteria, then you will also probably have to complete an SPD for them, or they will complete one as well to be submitted. But you know, you have to think about this at this point in time so that you can put it in your bid. Okay, so hope that's useful. That is a little run through the PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing that and go into PCS.
We're going live into the portals now.
Okay.
Perfect, thanks Julie. Just stay with us guys. If your screen's gone blank, you'll be able to see Public Contract Scotland shortly. Please keep your questions coming through the live chat. Remember to direct them to all panellists, please. There we go. Thanks, Julie.
Okay, is that you seeing PCS?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I've got a black button in the middle. I don't know why, but anyway, I will try to. No, can't move it. Okay, so this is the screen that I took a screen print of. So you can see I put in here South Lanarkshire, and then I just hit search notices, and up it came with the roads and infrastructure framework there. So as I said, these light blue, it just means it's a link and you can click on it. So as David said, 10th of March 23, which is very generous of them, because that gives you plenty of time to get this in. So if you click on that link there, this is where you will see all the different tabs in the notice, and up here is the link to PCST if you don't have a single sign-on set up, and the project code 23182, which is there that you will need to search. And just to point out some things on the notice itself. So here you'll see a fairly short introduction to the framework. So they're going to be using the NEC3 framework. So it'll be useful if you've used that before, and you can put that in your example or past experience. And like I say, there's 7 different lots. So within those, and you'll see in the next sheet, you'll be able to see where the work that you do falls in within each of those lots. The reason it's been lotted is that you don't have to be able to do everything. So for example, if groundworks is what you do, then that's totally fine. You just apply for lot 7 and that's it. So you choose which one, or more than one, or even all of them. But remember, for each one, you have to evidence past relevant experience. So you have to think about that. I can't think, oh, I'll just do the temporary traffic management as well. If you haven't had 3 examples of that within the last 5 years, then you're not going to pass. So within the full notice text, this is where you get a lot more detail. So you'll see here again, you've got the short description, the overall value, but then it goes into each lot. So in here, for each lot, it tells you what each lot is. It's got the weighting that we talked about, the 40/60, and then also what the value is of each lot. Now this is only an estimate, and it will be all over the documents that there's no guarantee of that level of work. That is them just trying to give an indication of the value. It's a 48-month framework. That is the maximum that you're allowed to have frameworks operate for, is 48 months. Okay, so each of the lots has got that, and I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom bit. So section 3 is what we're talking about. This is where you really need to I'm just going to make this a bit bigger, actually. It's probably quite small for you. This is where you need to look carefully at to see if you're definitely going to pass the pass-fail questions. So you can see here that they have, so for each question, so for 4A1, it's given an indication of what they are looking for from you. And then in here one, we've got 4B4, which is economic and financial standing, and this is where they've got the ratios. So there's 3 ratios: profitability, liquidity, and gearing. These have to be certain numbers for you to pass. So please do take these as actions after today, that you go away and have a look at these in detail and make sure you can pass. If it says you've got to pass 2 out of 3s, but if you can't pass 2 out of 3, then they may take under note. There's things down here which will be considered. Okay, so all is not lost. It's a very generous mark really to go on here. So if you're not sure, then please just go through all of these questions if you don't pass 2 out of 3 of the ratios. Then within insurance, we said there's 10 million for employers and 5 million for public. That's very standard. I would say sometimes it's 10 and 10. In this case, it's 10 and 5. And I mentioned about the 4C1, which is technical and professional ability. This is where you've got to be able to show you've had similar contracts, projects or frameworks or contracts that are of a similar nature and size and value of this requirement. Now, David might be able to help out. If we don't know what the call-offs are going to be, then it's not that easy to know whether you've done work of the value that's going to be required. So that's something I'd probably want to ask there. We're looking for 3 examples to pass this. Okay, and then they've got different licenses here that you're required to have. And I mentioned about ISO 9001, which is quality, and ISO 14001, which is environment, and they're saying have that in place or equivalent. And like I said, there is a template there that says what they mean by equivalent, so that's very good. So really that's yeah, for each of these different questions, these 2D1 and 3C1, etc., are referring to paragraph numbers in the SPD, which we'll see when we come on to it. Okay, so that is just a quick overview of the notice and why it is really important to dissect the notice, understand the lots, understand the selection criteria, and make your bid no bid decision as to whether you are going to proceed or not. What I'm going to quickly do is log in, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I've actually got a link set up down here where I can access PCST via the PCS. And the reason I really like that is because I don't have to remember 2 passwords. So I just log into PCS and it takes me straight through to PCST. And as I said before, you've got these different links here, and we noted in the notice that it was ITTs. So if you click on ITT, these are all of the ones here that are being run on the, oh, there's one called a super lot. Oh, sometimes you want to look at these things even though they're nothing to do with what we're doing. So then you would go up here, and this is where I said to you about this down arrow. So it's not obvious at all how to use this search. I always just use the down arrow, and then I'll choose project code, and I'm going to say contains, and then I've got this thing in the middle of my, now it would come up, and I'll tell you why it won't come up in a second, but normally you put that in here. Oh yes, some of them are. So the reason I was thinking it wouldn't come up is because I've already looked at lot 1, but that's okay because the other lots are here. So just say I want groundwork, so I'm going to click on groundworks, and then what happens is you then see the front page in PCST, and you can either say, right, that's fine, I've got this far, had enough for today, quite happy, I'm going to pick this up tomorrow, or you can print it off and you can see different the weightings, etc., or you can express interest. So I'm just going to express interest, ask you just to confirm you want to express interest, and once you've done that, you can see the so there's lot 7 down here. Okay, so the other ones are greyed out because I haven't expressed interest in them yet, and you know I won't actually, but you might. So yeah, as you can see here, you've got the top one, which is like the master, and then you've got the bottom ones, which are for each of the lot specific ones. So I'm just going to go into the master just now. So you can see this takes you into my response here. And there's the buyer attachment. So as I said, if you go to buyer attachments, it's really important that you download these and have a read through and highlight them to your heart's content. The best way to do it is just to go down this mass download route here on the right. What I tend to do is I'll have, for my clients, I'll have a folder called client name, and then within that I'll have South Lanarkshire Council and the deadline of the tender is the folder name, and then within that folder I'll have one called tender docs, and that's where I'll put all of these. You do have to remember that sometimes the buyer will update these documents and replace them, so if there is a clarification comes through like that, then you do have to remember to go back in and download the most up-to-date version of it and replace it. But I just like that because it means that I don't have to go into PCST all the time to look at the documents. I've got them on my shared folder and I can refer to those at any time. Okay, so once I've done that, I then go into my response. Now you might think, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, I'm not able to click in any of these boxes. That's because you have to see whether you're going to respond or not. So even though you've expressed interest already, it still asks you, are you going to intend to respond? So I'm going to say yes, because I want to show you some of this. You can see that you can download it in Excel if you wish. It's not something I usually do because I'm just worried that by the time I complete it and try to re-upload it, it's not going to work. So I just tend to use everything in PCST. Then you've got a submit response. Now this would not submit at the moment because there will be some questions that aren't answered. Good as you get a little summary up here. So you've called qualification response and there's 8 mandatory questions that haven't been answered. So that's good that you know that, and you can always scroll back up to the top to see how you're getting on with doing all of these mandatory. It's so very rewarding to see that number go down. So can I click in here yet? No, I can't. Still can't click in here, and that is because you see this little icon here. That is a pencil. It used to say edit, which most people would relate to, but it seems to be more common icon to use a pencil for when you want to change something. So that's what they changed it to. So what you need to do is, it doesn't look like anything, but you actually you need to click on that. Saying about the colours being really wishy-washy on PCST, it makes it difficult to see these things. So now I am actually able to go in and answer some questions. So these asterisks here, that means they're mandatory questions. So for example, you saw that I had it was 8, I think, unanswered. So if I put yes, I've read the document, and you can click on the little calendar and just choose today. So if I then save and exit my response, you can see I'm down to 6 now, and that was easy. So if I go back in here, then I can continue on down. The reason I don't have many mandatories that I haven't answered is because it saved my response from the previous tenders that I've done. So you can see in here the SPD, single procurement document, and that's what's being used. And here are the questions that you get asked. They're all of these ones are very straightforward, just about your organisation. In this one, 2A16, if you are a UK business, then the answer is not applicable. I am a UK business. And if you're not a UK business, then you will have to read more in detail. Now, this is the bit about whether you are collaborating with others. So just if you've decided that maybe you are going to come in as a collaboration, then that is called a consortium or a joint venture. Then you would click yes for this. But again, there's helpful notes there which says if you're going to use subcontractors, that is different. That is not a consortium. So your answer here would still be no, but there's further questions further down about subcontracting. Okay. So then you've got a tick box about which lots it is you want to apply for. And then just some personal details about the person who's filling out the form. Right, so this is where it comes into about subcontracting. This is saying, do you rely on the capacities of other entities to meet the selection criteria? That's all of the things that I read out before about the ratios and things like that. So if you are bidding with somebody else because of that, then you would put yes there. And what happens is if you put yes, it then comes up with more information that you need. Also want to point out, because it is really not obvious, I don't know why it's not a paperclip, but over here on the left, this looks like to me a hazard warning sign with an sign with an exclamation mark on it. That is actually an attachment. So what you would do is you would click on that and you would fill that in if you are applying with other contractors. So you see how it's conditional. So if I go back and say no, then those questions don't come up, because they're only going to be coming up depending on what my answer to the question is. So it's quite a clever system that way. Right, here it's asking, are you going to subcontract? So if I say yes, then here is asking me for a list of the subcontractors, and it's telling me which parts of the SPD need to be completed by the subcontractor. And again, this little hazard sign is actually an attachment which you then would need to download and complete. Then if we scroll down, you've got all of the mass murderer questions. Okay, so again, you know, have you been guilty of any of these? If you answer yes, then it asks you for more details about whatever it is. If you answer no, you will see that it's not asking those questions. So just go through all of these questions. If you're not used to them, you'll have to read them quite carefully. Once you get used to them, you know what they are. They're not allowed to be changed in the SPD. They have to stay exactly as they are. Okay, so get right down to the bottom. There's a lot of these questions, as you can see. So this is where it gets into the professional trade registers. There is a note in the contract notice about this one. So you would answer that accordingly. And then this is your economic one, where it's got profitability, liquidity, and gearing. So they're wanting you to say what the figures actually are. And again here, in this little bit, there's the attachment, which tells you how to calculate these. So you put those figures in there. Okay, and then it's asking you about your insurance. And what you can say here is, yes, I've got it. No, I don't have it. Now, if you say no, but I commit to obtaining it, that's fine. But if you say no and I cannot commit to obtaining it, then basically that would be you failed. So I would recommend you don't do that. And then not applicable is where if your business is exempt from employers like mine is, then you've got the option to say that you're exempt from that. Okay, and then here we're seeing, so all of them, it's 3 examples for each of these lots. And there is an attachment. Now it's interesting because it is a paperclip this time. But if you click on that, then you can download and complete it. And that's the one that I took a screen print of, where you have to put your past experience in there. All right. And then this is asking you about you've got to have these licenses. So although it's in qualifications, education and qualifications, it's actually referring to above, it's referring to these licenses. So you would put in this box what licenses you have. And is what percentage of subcontracting? I don't know why that is not up with the subcontracting question. The buyer is not in any control of that. That's just the way the SPD is, but it's somewhere different, unfortunately. And then we come into the sections about the quality and environment, and asking you if you have got an external accreditation, and if not, then can you confirm that you've got something alternative in place? And then lastly, you just put your name, your position, so managing director, bid manager, whatever you are, where the date and the place, so where you actually are completing that by. One thing I must mention to you is that you get timed out of this system far quicker than you think, because you're working your way through. It does not save automatically. Let that be a warning to you. The number of times that I have been merrily working my way through, and I think, oh, that's good, I'm nearly there, and then go to save my changes and go, sorry, you've been logged out because of time. Nah, it doesn't tell you. So as you go along, save your changes constantly. It is a bit of annoying that when you save your changes, it takes you back to the top, so you have to scroll all the way through again. But it's better than losing stuff. When you've finished for the day or you've had enough, then you can save and exit. And when you think you're ready, you can validate the response. But to see how many questions you've got left, you have to save and exit. And I didn't answer any more there, so I've still got the 6 left, and I would still go in there and use the pencil there. Okay, so that is the top level one. And then for each of the lots, so if I go into my ITTs, you will see now I've got lot 7 and lot 1 because I've expressed interest in them, and that's the one that we've just looked at, and that's the qualification. So I'm just going to go into lot 7 now. And you can see it's got the same files there to be downloaded, but lots of different questions are in here. So for each one of these questions, you have to answer and then upload the document. So you've got one about how you will manage the contract process, from the opportunity to award to construction commencing and then client handover. You've got a question about health and safety. You've got a question about the workforce and plant available. So usually you would put a bit of an organisation chart in here, and it's about this framework. So just say you are a massive company and you've got, you know, different you've got like a London team and a Birmingham team and an Edinburgh team and a Glasgow team or something, then you would just be putting in here whichever teams are actually going to be supplying this framework. So if you're a smaller business and everybody be working on the framework, then you put your whole organisation chart in here, but it is specific to this framework. And remember, it's not just about the workforce. I would be putting in here the management team, the middle management, the supervision, and the actual feet on the ground as well. And it's also asking about plant. So it's more about what plant you'll have to deliver this work. So again, that would be a list of things that you have available to you that you would use on this contract. It's asking you what out of hours provisions you got for emergencies. How you resolve complaints. Then there's a question on Fair Work First, question on community benefits, and sort of yes/no questions on construction charter. Asking you if you pay the living wage. It's not scored or evaluated, but they just like to gather that for statistical purposes. And then we get into the commercial bit. So this is where you would put your pricing. In this case, there is an attachment again, which you would download and complete. And then there is, within the documents, you'll see there's a form of tender and a bill of quantities, which has to be uploaded here. Okay, and that is it, as they say. So once you've clicked intend to respond, you will then be able to edit this, and you will be able to upload these documents once you have completed them. And they are specific to each lot. So if you've got different equipment for different lots, then do remember to make it specific to each lot. And again, they've got all of these bullet points and details. What I always do is I take that, I copy and paste that into my response document, and I use them to make myself some headings. And the good thing about doing that is that you will always make sure that you do cover everything. Now, what I can't see in this bit of it is whether there are page limits or word limits for each of these documents, but that may well be in the instructions to tenderers, which by the time you're doing this, you should have read all of that anyway and made notes on that. So conscious of time, it's after 3 o'clock. I hope that's been useful to you. I'll now stop sharing.